Hello everyone, welcome to the first Songwriter live stream. Today's session is all about the songwriters behind the hits. I'm Nicola, I'm a singer-songwriter and I play the guitar. I'm currently working on my own artist project, but I also have a strong interest in composing for other purposes, such as film, TV, live music, etc. So I'm now going to pass over to Victoria and EJ to now introduce themselves.
Hiya, I'm Victoria. I'm a singer, songwriter, session musician and music teacher.
Hi, I'm EJ. I'm also a singer-songwriter, play a few instruments like guitar, ukulele, a bit of piano, and the kora, which is a West African harp, and also a music tutor.
Amazing. Okay, so I'm going to start this session off talking a little bit about writing for sync. Now, what does that actually mean? So sync is short for synchronization license. And it's a music license granted by the holder of the copyright of the composition, allowing the licensee permission to synchronize the music with some kind of visual output. So basically what that means is matching a piece of music to some kind of visual. So that could be, it could be an advert, or it could be a computer game. It might be a YouTube clip or a video game, pretty much anything. Sync can be used in lots of different aspects. And the sync industry is a multi-billion-dollar industry. So there's lots of opportunities there for artists to fund other parts of their projects. So things like getting into the studio or rehearsal time or touring. But also it can provide a lot of exposure for artists. So if a song is used for sync on a computer game or at the end of a TV program, for example, it can really help up and coming artists to kind of get a bit more exposure and get their names out there without them actually having to put a lot of money into PR or anything like that. So it's also really important, actually. Sync's really important for musicians, especially now that we're in an industry that doesn't focus so much on record sales. Streaming isn't great for artists unless you're huge. So this is a really great way for smaller artists or artists who are starting out to kind of get a bit of income and make a living out of being musicians. So how can writing a sync differ from writing for yourself? Well, more often than not, music supervisors kind of have a rough idea of exactly what they want. So PRS have made a really good kind of article that you can go and have a read, giving advice for writing for sync. And it basically says the number one point is, unless you've been given a brief, just focus on writing really, really good songs rather than thinking I'm writing to try and get a sync. So focus on just making sure that the songs are really amazing. What it was also kind of saying was that if you are given a brief to write to, it's really important that you get to the real bones or the foundation of what they're actually asking for. So what can be really useful, and what I do sometimes, is either underlining words or phrases that really kind of hammer home what they want and what they're looking for, because it can be quite easy for us as artists sometimes to write what we think someone wants rather than actually what they want, because we kind of go off on a bit of a tangent. And that's kind of one of the skills and one of the disciplines when you're writing to a brief or writing not necessarily for yourself. The other kind of important thing with writing for sync or being that kind of musician is being really versatile. So being able to play in lots of different genres and styles, being quite open to singing or playing in a different way. And the way we can get better at that is just kind of practice. So if you're someone that kind of naturally likes metal and that's what you like to listen to, it might be a really good challenge for you to have a go at writing a country song or a pop song, or even sometimes if you don't know where exactly to start, trying to do a bit of a cover of a song that's something that you really love and making it into a different style. That can be a really good way of practicing those kind of skills and techniques. I think it's really positive to recognize the things that are uniquely you, and that's really important. But then once you've done that and you've managed to get a hold on the things that kind of, make you as an artist, it can be then good to think, okay, well, I'm going to try and write a song and not have too much of that in there, if that makes sense. The other thing is just also to expose yourself and to listen to lots and lots of different types of music. So getting out to gigs of bands that maybe you wouldn't necessarily listen to, or putting on Radio 6 instead of Radio 1, whatever it is that gives you a broader breadth of knowledge of music, I think is really important when you're doing this kind of thing. The other thing is that you don't have to have a publishing deal to get a sync. Publishers often push their artists to sync agencies and music supervisors, so it can be a bit easier, but it's not the only way to do it. So I think that's something that's really important to remember. So the next thing is library music, or it's sometimes called stock music or production music. And that's music that can be licensed to customers to use in film, TV or radio. And often the music is produced and owned by the production company. So I've got a couple of friends that write library music, and they kind of work as a collective, and everything kind of is just used that way. And it can be a lot easier sometimes for companies to use library music because majority of the time it's already been cleared. So that takes all of those kind of issues away from it. One really important thing to think about if you're considering getting into library music is that once a song has been cleared, so any kind of pre-cleared tracks means that they can be used for lots of different things. So say if you had really strong vegetarian beliefs and then there was a chain of butchers that wanted to use a song for their advertising, you have to kind of remember that once you've kind of signed off on that and you've let your music into the world in that kind of way, that you don't really have the same kind of control over it. So that's why sometimes writing for sync and having that negotiation can actually be a bit better than writing library music if you feel that way about those kind of things. So how can you prepare for this kind of career? So as I've already touched on, listening to lots of different types of music and exploring genres and instrumentation, and then playing music with people who have different likes to you is really good. But also writing every day. So the only way that we get better as songwriters and musicians is if we practice and keep challenging ourselves. So that's really, really important. Something that I wanted to touch on sync, which I thought was quite interesting, was recently Neil Young has actually has kind of tried to sue the Trump administration because they've been using his music without permission. And I think that's really interesting. Something that we need to remember as well is that what's really interesting about us as artists is that we do have a lot of control over our music. You don't have to just let it be used by anyone. So just because a sync comes up, it doesn't mean that you have to take it. There's lots of artists that don't want their music used for different things. And I thought the Neil Young example was a really good kind of recent one of someone who said, actually, I don't really want this to be used, which is quite interesting. So for me personally, in the way that my career has progressed, I've had a couple of tracks used for sync, mainly for, I've had one for a computer game, a couple for kind of TV and film, mainly in the States, a few bits over here. But again, when I was writing my first EP, I wasn't thinking, is this track really syncable? That wasn't kind of my first idea. I was just thinking, is this good music? And then, luckily it got picked up. And I think looking back and reflecting now on the songs that have been picked up, what I've noticed about them is that the majority have got kind of some strong kind of emotion. So whether that doesn't have to be like happy or sad or whatever, it might be like fun or party or whatever, but it's had like a really strong emotional feel to it. So a track that I want to play to you is one called World in a Room, and it was used by Rockstar Games for Grand Theft Auto.
This room, the world has become this room, the world has become this room, I get this feeling that I won't be leaving anytime soon. The world has become this room, I run with this feeling, 'cause I won't be leaving anytime soon. The world has become this room, the world has become this room,
So what I thought was really good about this track, or the reason that I think potentially it got picked up, although we never know why things get picked up, is that it has quite a catchy chorus, and also it talks about the world in a room. So kind of the world has become this room, which sometimes can happen when you're playing computer games. You can kind of get kind of lost in the world of the game. And so looking back on that track now, I can kind of see why it might have been picked up for that kind of thing. Amazing. Okay, I'm going to pass back to Nicola.
Okay, so we had some great points from Victoria there on sync and library music and everything like that. So I'm going to be talking about writing for yourself. So, you know, your own artist project, or if you're writing with a band, it's all like an artist project at the end of the day. So I'll just talk about the pros and cons and what you can kind of expect to happen when you're, you know, writing for yourself. So the first bit I'm going to talk about is writing by yourself for your own project. So you have first and final say over everything because it's your project, and you'll get 100% writing ownership and authorship from it. So, you know, if you go on to and sign on with PRS, which we'll talk about in later live streams, then every time your song gets played anywhere, then you'll obviously get all the credit for it and you'll get the royalties for it. So that can be quite good, especially when you're starting out, and obviously when you get, you know, to become a bigger artist, and you know, that's where you can get a lot of the income. So another thing with, you know, having the first and final say over your project, you know, you write about whatever you want and however you want to, which can make you quite unique because you are your own person. You know, you have your own beliefs and your own way of expressing things. So that can kind of set you apart from other people. With my own writing project, I've often been like listening to songs and think, oh, you know, I really want to write this song. And I'll sit there and I'll, you know, produce it or do whatever I want with it. And I'm kind of like, oh, that kind of sounds a little bit too much like that song. I don't want it to just be another, for example, I don't know, house pop R&B song. And I was talking to one of my friends who's a producer, and he was just saying, you know, it won't, because no one has your voice. Your voice is, you know, yours. And, you know, just the way you write things will set you apart from other people. So there's nothing to worry about in that sense. So, and I thought that was quite interesting. And it's a great experience as well, because if you're purely writing by yourself for yourself, you get to you push yourself, you know, and practice makes perfect at the end of the day. So maybe a couple of the cons of writing by yourself for yourself is kind of, it can be a very long process. So, you know, you'll have to make most of the decisions, where if you're writing with someone else, then, you know, they can maybe take some of that off your back. And it can be quite tiring, and you can kind of fall into the trap of spending too long on, you know, a bunch of songs when you really need to just, you know, that's it, they're finished, move on. So, yeah, that can be a little bit annoying at times, but, you know, you've just got to know when to be like, right, I've redrafted this song how many times now, it's finished, and I think, you know what, I'm cool with it, I'm done. So the other issue there as well with writing by yourself is that your songs can sometimes sound quite similar to each other. So you might use the same chord progression, but just, you know, change key, and, you know, it's basically like copying, pasting, and you don't really go anywhere with that. You know, they can sound good. There are songs that, you know, use the same chord progression over and over again. You know, there's a YouTube video that has that. But, you know, if you really want to push yourself, you want to kind of, you know, not stick with the same chord progression all the time. And you do tend to learn new things about songwriting and about yourself when you're writing, you know, alone, because you know, like, how to push yourself, or when you need to kind of focus on things, or maybe you're talking about something personal, you know, when not to maybe go too deep into a song or not. So it's just all these things to consider. So when you're writing for yourself but with other people, you can have some conflict, and it can be hard to deal with sometimes. But again, you just got to know how to. You just got to be a nice person at the end of the day, and just put your point across in the way that, you know, you want to. But we'll talk about that again. We'll go into more detail a bit later on. The good thing about writing with other people is that 2 minds or more can be better than 1, and you can get things done like super quick. So what you lack in, for example, someone else might make up for it. So let's say you're really good at writing melodies but not so strong with lyrics. Your co-writer might be amazing at lyrics. So, you know, you could just be like, right, I'm good at this, you're good at this, let's just work with what we've got. because sometimes it can be a little bit like, oh, I want to be the best at everything, or, you know, you just got to kind of know your strengths and your weaknesses. Obviously work on your weaknesses, and if you want to get better at writing lyrics, then, you know, practice it, you know, just write lyrics like every day for like, I don't know, a couple of weeks or longer, you know. But sometimes it's just when you're put in a situation, put in a room with another co-writer, you've just got to kind of just go with it. But what else is there? So you can also get constructive and helpful feedback when you've got another writer in the room. Obviously, when you're writing by yourself, it's just you, unless you have other people that you can trust to listen to your songs and give you feedback. But it's always helpful having that extra person. And they will also bring something unique to the session. And, you know, it's just, again, it's a great experience. And, you know, you get to network with other people. And you never know when, you know, that co-writer might need you to work on something in the future. And it could be really benefit, you know, you just turn it down. So I encourage networking and writing with other people as much as you can. So some of the songwriting challenges I've faced so far with writing for myself is that I've changed genre quite a few times. So I've been, you know, a bit unsure about what genre I wanted to work in. I went from, so just before I studied at uni, I went from writing like acoustic soul. And then when I started uni, I was like, soul, blues, that's it, don't do anything else. And then kind of as I moved into my second year, I wanted to do neo soul. But then I kind of just started listening to new music and just listening to other things. And I was like, you know what, I don't want to just do those genres by themselves. So I thought maybe I'll mix it in with pop. And, you know, I'm still figuring it out totally, because I need to personally work with more producers. And, you know, that's something that I'm going to be moving on to now with sonic identity. So it's just like, you know, when you've got the song written and you take it to a producer, it's all the little sounds that you put together and, you know, actually producing a track which kind of makes your sonic identity more clear. So sometimes you have to work with other people. You know, we don't, like I said before, we don't always have the time, or we don't always have the ability to do absolutely everything. And that's okay, because, you know, it's quite a lovely thing to be able to, you know, go and work with someone else who's really good at something. It's just like, oh, cool. And then they'll bring their own thing. And, you know, it becomes quite an enjoyable session. You get the most out of that session and, you know, your own skills. So, yeah, I'd say that's something I've struggled to do, is just, you know, sort my sonic identity out. But that's easily, you know, fixed by working with producers. And I guess communicating my ideas clearly to session musicians and producers, that's an important thing. Make sure you know, like, for example, if you're taking a reference track to someone, to a producer or a musician, you know, don't just give them the tracks and be like, yep, there you go. You know, you want to be able to tell them why you like that song. What is it you like about the drums? Why do you like those drums? Why do you want to put that onto your track? You know, you want to be quite clear with that. So yeah, just another, I want to talk about a songwriter in particular that writes mainly for himself, especially with his own, you know, music and albums that he's done, well, I don't know, the last like 10 years or whatever. So it's John Mayer, and he's gone through like different genres, and still he kind of blends his genres. So it's like pop, soft rock, blues, soul, bit of country as well. So he's, if you don't know who he is, then he's most famous for the songs Gravity, Your Body Is in Wonderland, and his cover of Free Falling by originally by Tom Petty. So like I said, the majority of his songs are solely written by him. There are a few songs that he's co-written on his albums or sang as a cover, but he is the main writer, which I found really like amazing, because on his album The Search for Everything and Born and Raised, there was not a single co-write in sight. So I think that's like quite a talent to be able to just be like, right, I'm just going to write this whole album with no help, nothing, just, you know, just me. So I think that's goals, to be honest. So yeah, well, that's me. So I'm going to pass over to EJ, and she's going to be talking about writing for other people now.
Thanks, Nicola. Yeah, all really good points as well. And yeah, it made me think about some things I haven't thought about before. And I like totally relate to the whole sonic identity and trying to figure that out, because especially if you listen to so many different musicians and you like so many different things, so you have to figure out what you want your music to sound like, which may not even sound like what you listen to. So yeah, I'm going to talk about writing for others and kind of collaboration, following on from what Nicola said. But please think, oh no, I'm not gonna Sorry, not going to think about any questions. Oh no. Sorry, Rory. Shall I go from I'm going to talk about? Yeah, I'll just go. So I'm going to talk about writing for others and a bit about collaboration as well, following on from what Nicola said. So you may think that many artists write most of or all of their songs because when we hear a really famous track by people like Beyonce or Rihanna, their name is attached to that song and they're the ones who are performing it or in the music videos and all of that. So, but actually, many of them don't. For example, American Boy was written by John Legend and will.i.am. Sia wrote Rihanna's Diamonds and many others, including Beyonce's Pretty Hurts. And Jessie J actually wrote Party in the USA by Miley Cyrus, even though she sings about living in Nashville, which is kind of strange. But you can kind of see that that song was like so perfect for Miley Cyrus to sing, even though it was written by someone else. And yeah, apparently Jessie J was going to record it, but she thought it wasn't edgy enough. So yeah. And it's important to note that most songwriters have many different endeavors, like writing their own songs, recording demos, live gigs, and most professional songwriters are affiliated with music publishers and interact with other music business professionals such as record engineers, record producers, recording artists and managers, and they often work very long hours and play an instrument to help them write, even though it's not completely necessary. So I have a video to show you of a songwriting team in the US who have been writing lots of hits that we've all heard, and they talk about the emotional side of collaborating.
I know you know that I made those mistakes maybe once or twice. By once or twice, I mean maybe a couple of 100 times.
This Justin Bieber hit dropped after his much-publicized breakup with fellow pop star Selena Gomez.
You've written with Justin Bieber, Selena Gomez. Do you sometimes feel like you're a relationship counselor at those times? You're writing, and you're almost writing to each of them.
Being aware of the fact of what pop culture was viewing him as in that moment, and I knew an apology would be good. Is it too late now to say sorry?
So there was no awkward moment there with working on both?
No, not at all.
Because you don't want to get caught in these people's lives.
In real life.
Right, and they tell you things, and of course those are sacred things you would never say to anybody.
Studios is really kind of a confessional.
It is.
So as you could hear in the video, to songwrite for others, if it's about their personal experience or their feelings, you need to kind of put yourself in their shoes and connect, and sometimes have that space for them to be vulnerable or you to share. And that's really kind of key to getting the true picture of what story they're trying to create and to actually represent them properly. So that can shape the song that you're writing and have it mean something to the artist and the audience. And if it's about a particular story or for a certain person, you need to know who they are, which songs of theirs have been hits and why, who their target audience is and how they come across to the world. And it needs to be new, refreshing and exciting, but also be them and recognizable to their fans, so that they don't feel like, oh, this song doesn't feel like them, someone else has written it. So things you can think about, which notes or keys does that artist usually use? Do they usually sing about a particular topic? What have they not touched on yet? What's their singing style? Do they use punchy and short notes or long and drawn out? And what song structure do they usually use? So writing for other people requires doing a bit of research and putting your own desires to the side, because it's, as I said, their name that's going to be attached to the song, not yours. And you also kind of need to be okay with that. A lot of songwriters want to be the face of their song and may not want to sell their song or, like give it to someone else. So you have to be okay with that from the get-go, because that's what you're putting yourself into. So you can also write a song not knowing any of this and not having anyone in mind, and then pitch it to an artist, manager or label. And again, it needs to have a good hook, relatable message, and be easy to sing along to, and have characteristics of a hit song that people know can sell. Because unfortunately, a lot of the music business is about money and what is going to make money, especially when you're not going independent. And you've got to find that balance between making a hit with commercial value and having integrity and authenticity with your music, artistry, and image, so that you feel good about what you're making as well. And that can be a hard balance to find and can take time. So kind of make sure you give yourself a lot of time to write a lot of songs. I mean, Ed Sheeran's talked about writing like thousands and thousands of songs, and loads of them at the beginning being really rubbish. So kind of what Nicola was saying about writing for yourself, make sure you dedicate a lot of time to doing that first, because with practice, each song is going to get better and better, and then hopefully you can pitch to other people. Yeah, so maybe you could pitch one of those songs that you feel is kind of good enough or is leading somewhere to someone else. And the first thing you could do is even pitch to a friend, rather than kind of sending it to someone that you don't know. Yeah. So I've got a quote here from Grammy winning songwriter Emily Warren, and she said, I think another really good exercise is studying the music that you love. For me, John Mayer, so we've got John Mayer again, was a huge influence. So once I started to write, I started to try and dissect his music and try to understand what about it was so captivating to me. I think he does really well. I think something he does really well is that he is able to tell such a good story that evolves and develops over the course of the song. He does this with imagery, detail, pairing the emotion of a lyric with the emotion of its melody, and giving each section purpose. I often find in his songs that there are no fillers, so every line seems intentional and shapes how the ideas are communicated. He is just one example for me, but I think listening actively to the music you love and trying to figure out why you love it can be a really great tool in shaping your own writing. So not only will this help you to write for others, but also for yourself, because surely everyone wants to kind of like the songs that they're singing, especially if you're going to be singing it all over the country and many, many times. So a good place to start, is thinking about what you listen to, why you like it, and what stands out from it. You could even listen to your favourite song and write a list about what stands out to you. It could be as simple as their first line, why does it reel you in, what's good about it. It could be about the drum beats, the verse, how it changes through the song, the layers, anything. And let yourself really explore what it means to songwrite, and you can find your voice and opinion through different songs to help you discover what kind of songwriter you want to be. And then that will help you, help guide you when writing for others. So yeah, how does it work? So songwriters rarely sell their songs. When you make a deal with a publisher, record label or artist to record your song, it's usually in the form of a contract or license. So that will be like work for hire, and that means they'll own your song copyright. But make sure that any contract you sign, you get a music business lawyer to look at it before and talk you through it, because there's always a lot of language and jargon that most of us wouldn't understand. And then the best and most realistic way to get people to hear and even use your songs is by going to artists who are just starting out. So either on a similar level to you, or upcoming musicians in your local area. And also because established artists they need really good songs, and especially if they're not songwriters themselves. So maybe you can provide that for them. Or there's also artists on shows like The X Factor or The Voice that are always looking for those songs kind of during the show and afterwards. And all of the winners and finalists in these shows need songs that sound like they can get airplay, because obviously they want to be successful and do well commercially. So yeah, so I've got some experience of writing kind of with others and collaborating. My first two singles that I released earlier this year were with a co-writer and producer, and also co-writer. And what I found really important when I took the song to them, I had to make sure that they kind of knew what it was about and the context behind it, because when I first started and I didn't say what it was about, I just kind of let them have their interpretation. They were almost going to take the song another direction, which is no fault of their own, because obviously everyone has different interpretations of songs. But it was quite an important message and important meaning to me personally that I wanted to stick with. So once I explained that, they were like, oh, right, if anything, that now makes more sense. And they preferred that meaning because it was kind of different. So I think being really honest and open about what you're trying to say is really, really important. And also it will help you feel better about your music. And yeah, because it can be difficult if you're just starting out as well, and then you're working with people who have a lot of experience. You might feel like you might get imposter syndrome, so not feeling like you deserve to be there, or you feel like they've got so much more experience than me, maybe I should just be quiet and do what they say. But actually you're trying to get into this industry and you've done your own research and you've worked hard to get to where you are, so they should value that and respect that, just like you should respect them. And then hopefully you can kind of learn and give and take from each other, because it's not all about just who you've worked with, you know. Everyone has their own thing to give. So yeah, once you've had your own, once you've found your own voice through songwriting and feel confident to share what you created, why not start with a friend? And this may feel weird at first, especially if they've never sang a song or taken a song from someone else, but it could be a good exchange for the both of you, because then you can learn new skills and have an exchange and yeah, go from there. So yeah, that's it from me.
Lovely, thanks EJ. Really, really good points at the end of that as well. I think just to reiterate and kind of highlight what you said about when you're working with other people, especially if they're more professional songwriters, don't be afraid to just, you know, put your opinion out there or put your ideas out there, because like you said, you are trying to get into this industry and, you know, you deserve to be there. You're in there for a reason. So just kind of be like, that's it, I'm going for it. I think that's really, really important. Cool. All right, so we've got some questions that we're going to answer. So the first one is, what is the role of a producer versus a songwriter? So Victoria, do you want to start with that one? Because you've got some experience in both, haven't you?
Oh, Victoria, you're on mute.
There we go. I'm back now.
Let me start that again. One sec. Okay, we've got some questions now that we're going to answer. So the first one is, what is the role of a producer versus songwriter? So I'm going to pass that over to Victoria to answer first.
Yeah, I mean, producers have so many different roles now, I think it really is dependent on the individual that you're working with. But generally for me, the way I kind of see the role of the producer that I kind of work quite closely with is that quite often I will go to him with kind of like the bare bones of a song, so maybe a chord structure and lyrics and melody, and then he will, you know, like put all the icing on the cakes and all the bells and whistles and make it sound like a fully finished and realized piece of music. But not everybody works like that. I mean, at the same time, sometimes he'll send me a track and I'll top line it, so he'll send me a finished track and I will write the lyrics and the melody over the top. And there are some producers who are also songwriters. EJ kind of touched on that she's co-written with a producer who kind of helped her with the writing side of things. So there are some producers that really do get involved with things like the lyrics and the melody. And what's really lovely about working with other people and that kind of collaboration is that you do really feed off each other. And, you know, they might hear a harmony somewhere that you wouldn't have expected it, or they might, you know, suggest an extra chord or a turnaround that makes the piece really special and really amazing. And I think that's the wonderful thing about collaboration. So yeah, producers have lots of different roles. It's a difficult one to say that they just do this or just do that, I would say.
Yeah, and vice versa, you can also get some songwriters that do work, you know, on production and use that to kind of get their songs across. I know I do that. So moving on to the second question, where do you start when writing a song? Melody, lyrics, drums, piano? I'll start off with this one, and I know you guys have also got some your own opinions and ideas on that. So for me, I've had many different approaches throughout my songwriting journey. Nowadays, it's very much like well, I've kind of got more into production, so I might make a track. I have an idea of what I want to write about, but I'll make the track, you know, guitar, anything, synth, whatever I put on there, and I'll kind of map out a song. So I'll write in Logic, you know, that's the intro 4 bars, or I don't know, verse 8 bars, etc., and do it like that, and kind of top line my own song. So yeah, I kind of do that mainly nowadays, but sometimes I do need to just go back to the guitar and just be like, right, I'm just writing it just like this, you know, vocals, guitar, simple. Just because I am aware of the fact that, you know, sometimes a song just, you know, it can only work with, or it can work by itself, you know, just with guitar and vocals. So that's really important. But otherwise, across the time I was at uni, there'd be like, I don't know, different approaches you can do. So maybe you get like a magazine or a newspaper, you cut up headlines and put all the words together and see if you can like write a song or write ideas based off that. So yeah, but mainly I will have an idea of what I want to write about and just kind of like write loads of different notes down, put them together and just improvise over that. So EJ, do you want to maybe talk about your approach?
Yeah, I'm kind of similar in that I have I have a mixture of approaches, but I think my main one is sitting down with a guitar and just kind of singing whatever comes to mind and writing it down, coming up with some chords. And sometimes what I do is, if I haven't written for a while or I've had a writer's block or something, I'll just accept that it's going to be quite simple to start with, and I'll just literally play like 4 chords, and then if I've had a particular something happen or that day or something's on my mind or a particular feeling, it just kind of can come easier because you don't have all this pressure for all the other stuff, and you're literally just writing whatever feels right, and then you can go back on it and start to kind of change up little bits here and there to make it a bit more interesting and add layers and depth. So yeah.
Sure, nice. Victoria, do you want to add to that?
Just to carry on from what EJ was saying, actually, quite often if I haven't written for a while or I've had writer's block, I'll definitely do that. I'll do like a track that is quite simple and it's usually something that I won't use. And then oddly, as soon as I've done that, it's like it's kind of opened the floodgates, and then I'll go it away afterwards and I'm like, oh my God, that's actually not that bad. But I do think that just like if you are struggling with writing, or if you're struggling with where to start, I think sometimes just getting out of your normal routine or going for a walk or looking out of the window and really just kind of being aware of what's around you can be really helpful. But yeah, I think there's no right or wrong way. I think, you know, you can start with a poem or with a word. I've got about 1 million 5-second voice notes on my phone of just like little melodies that then sometimes I'll go back to a month later and they trigger something. So yeah, write everything down, I think, is the important thing.
Yeah, definitely. And also record if you've got like a phone that obviously, well, most phones record nowadays, but if you can, then just like record your ideas from like start to finish, because then, you know, if you're like me and you've got like the memory of a goldfish sometimes, then I'll forget a melody that I really liked and, you know, it's gone. it's just you know, see you later. But yeah, nice, cool. So third question that we've got here is, are there significant artists archetypes to reference when writing? EJ, do you want to start that one?
Yeah, I don't think there are particular ones like kind of that you should only reference. I think it's all about your personal taste and preference and what you're interested in, and yeah, where you take inspiration from. So I wouldn't say there's any significant ones apart from like obviously the classics, like Marvin Gaye has been sampled a lot, and there's also been a lot of copyright issues with that. So yeah, make sure you sort out the copyright and kind of learn about that side of things. Yeah.
Cool, nice. Victoria, do you want to add anything to that?
No, not really. I think
no. Yeah, I think that's pretty cool there. Nice. So next one, how do songwriters find their sound? Some songs are instantly recognizable by their vibe, trademark. So I think it kind of helps with production to get your sound, at least your sonic identity with like a whole track. It's just the little things you add to it, little clever production things can, help, basically solidify an artist's songwriter's sound. But I think, like I was saying before when I was talking about writing for yourself, your own, if you're a songwriter that sings, and you're singing your own stuff, then your own voice will kind of be your sound, if that makes sense. But there are many other ways that, you know, you can, like I said, with the production stuff, that you can, you know, make your sound, especially your lyrics as well. And everyone goes through different things in life, and, you know, you all write about your own, you know, personal feelings and thoughts and experiences. So that can kind of solidify that as well. Do you guys want to add anything else, Victoria, EJ?
I think that the other thing to be really aware of is, and we all do it, is not to imitate other artists. I know that I used to honestly just try and sing like Erykah Badu all the time, and that was just my constant. And I actually went to a singing teacher, and she, first lesson I had with her, and she just said, "Can you sing to me?" And I sang her an Erykah Badu song, and she was just like, "Sing me something else, because you're just so trying to sound like her that it's." And I think that need to remember is just, like you were saying, Nicola, no one can sing like you. So it's not about being the best, you know, technically the best singer in the world, or, you know, being able to sing the highest notes or hold them for the longest time. I think it's really about finding what your voice is and what makes you sound like you. And I think that's where songwriting is important, because when we sing covers, unless we're really sure of who we are already, it can be really easy to fall into that imitation side of things.
Yeah, sure. Cool. All right, we've got one last question. So, do you write from your own point of view, or do you write from someone else's point of view, or completely fictional? I know what I do, but let's start off with EJ.
I do a mixture again. My favourite is to write my own, from my own point of view, and really delve into that. But I also sometimes, if I've watched a particular film, or someone's told me something, not like really secret, but, you know, general thing, like about their love life or something, I kind of like to, oh no, boy, now my friend's going to see this, not tell me anything. But no, I think, yeah, kind of you take inspiration from your life and what you hear, and you can kind of, you know, make it general. And a lot of people relate to so many things that we all go through anyway. But yeah, I think don't limit yourself to just writing from one point of view, because there's a lot to find in variation.
Yeah, definitely. I agree. I'm pretty much the same. When I've been lost for inspiration with, or, you know, writing about stuff for myself, then I will probably look at what is going on around me, maybe with my friends. Obviously, if you're going to write something about your friends, make sure they're okay with it. Or, you know, there's a quote that one of my lecturers at uni told me, is like, never let the truth get in the way of a good song. So if you're writing a song that, you know, maybe starts off with your own experience, if you get to a point where you're like, oh, I don't really know what to write next, or you're writing a song about someone else and you think, oh God, their experience is like really interesting, and you don't want it to be obvious, or you feel bad from writing that, then you can just change it, and it can be fictional, you know. So there are ways around, you know, writing for yourself, for your own point of view, someone else's, and completely fictional. You can mix it up. There's no one right way of doing it, if that makes sense. So yeah. Victoria?
Yeah, I agree. I think for me personally, like, quite often my songs are kind of exaggerated versions of things that maybe have happened to me, so they're not quite as dramatic or emotional as maybe they come across in the song, or that I'm writing more from a feeling rather than necessarily. Some of my songs are a bit weird, and my husband kind of says that doesn't really make any sense, Victoria, and it's more that I'm writing from the feeling rather than like necessarily a story. And I think that's okay as well. Like, everything doesn't have to be in a kind of story form. You can just write, you know, about the emotion as well, I think. Yeah,
sometimes, like, when we write things as well, they might not make total sense. Like, maybe the grammar might not be like the best, or I don't know, for example, you may be writing it in like shorthand or whatever, but I think as long as you understand what, you know, that writer or that artist is trying to say, I don't think it matters too much, you know. So for example, at uni, we had a lot of writers that were not from the UK, so their English might have been a little bit different to like how I would write it, and we were like, it doesn't matter at all, because, you know, we understand what you're saying. So your English, if you're not English, it doesn't have to be perfect. You know, I think is a talk about the feeling. Writing from the feeling is really important. That's something I didn't think about as well until like now. I think I forgot about that completely. And when people listen to songs, they kind of, well, I know that I do this, but I don't really listen to the lyrics straight away, if that makes sense. I kind of just listen to the vibe and like everything.
Yeah.
So it doesn't really matter like what the lyrics are perfect, as long as they can kind of get what you're saying.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean?
And I think, sorry, just one point to add to that as well. I've done so many gigs before where there's a track of mine called Atom Bombs, and I've had people come up to me and be like, oh my God, this song is so about this and blah, blah, blah. And then someone else will come up to me and be like, oh my God, this song's about this and I'm so related to it. And like none of them would have got it right. And I think that's the other thing for us as songwriters, is that it's not always important that people completely understand what you're trying to say, as long as they get something from it.
Yeah.
And I think that's the other thing.
For sure. Cool. Lovely. Well, that is all we've got for questions. So thank you all for watching, and make sure you watch the next session, because we're going to be talking about tips for aspiring songwriters and what we'll be covering in future sessions, which we will be telling you in the next few sessions. So make sure you tune in, ask your friends to tune in as well, and if you've got any questions, then please let us know. Thanks. See ya.
Bye.